Welcome to another miraculous edition of the Corey Margera Show. I'm your host, your Lord and Savior of Eternal Coolness, Corey Margera, your motherfucking taste god, opinion god, and your supreme ruler of all that is cool and badass. And in this episode, I'm going to be doing a comparison of comparison of the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I've been playing some old school wrestling games from both the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era. And by playing those games, it made me want to go on YouTube and relive some old moments from both of those eras, from back in the late 90s to the early to mid 2000s. And, there's a lot of talk about how great the Attitude Era is, and rightfully so. I do think that the Ruthless Aggression Era is underrated. I do think that the Attitude Era is better, but I do think that the Ruthless Aggression Era has its upsides, and even certain things about the Ruthless Aggression Era that are actually better than the Attitude Era, and likewise. But, I just kind of wanted to do a comparison on a few things. First topic I'm going to be talking about is video games between the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era. And, you know what? The Ruthless Aggression Era wins video games category. I know this is probably going to piss off a lot of people because I know that there's a lot of people out there who grew up with WWF No Mercy, SmackDown 2, WrestleMania 2000, even, non-WWE games, WWF games like WCW, NWO Revenge. And personally, as much as I enjoyed those games, and as much as I enjoyed those great THQ Aki wrestling games like Revenge and World Tour and WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy, and even SmackDown 2 was okay, but all in all, those were the best games during that era. I mean, if you go back and play like WWF Warzone and WWF Attitude, those games were terrible, especially by today's standards. I can't even go back and play those games. I can't go back and play WCW Nitro for the PlayStation 1. I can't go back and play like WCW NWO Thunder for the PS1. Even like the good games from that era like Revenge and No Mercy, they're great games, but they lack a lot of different match types. They lack the roster is excellent, but the graphics look pretty dated by today's standards. And, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, heat and whatever, but I just enjoy the Ruthless Aggression Era games a lot more than those games. Personally, especially, no game that came out during the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars era, no game can compete. None of those games, not even No Mercy, can compete with SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. That's just the best wrestling game I've ever played in my life. It's still the best wrestling game I've ever played in my life. And, I go back to Here Comes the Pain all the time. I still have my PS2 hooked up for that game. Games like Day of Reckoning 2 for the Nintendo GameCube were fucking awesome. SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. Games that I've been playing a lot lately. Been going back to my PS2 and the GameCube and playing those games, and I just realized, holy shit, those games are way better than the games that came out during the Attitude Era. And I love the Attitude Era. I love the Attitude, but video game wise, it had some good games, but I can't. I seriously, man, playing SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. Climbing up the SmackDown Fizz as Jeff Hardy and doing all kinds of moves as Rob Van Dam as well. I remember I actually put a guy on a table. It was me. It was Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy. It was a really sick, extreme, hardcore match. I climbed up to SmackDown Fizz, did a 5-star frog splash on Rob Van Dam. I mean, I did a 5-star frog splash on Jeff Hardy with Rob Van Dam. And I mean, this is stuff you can't even do in the old N64 games. I mean, you can't even do this in the old PS1 SmackDown 2 or the old WWF Warzone or Attitude Era games. You can't do stuff like that. I mean, the backstage areas are amazing. Like jumping off and SmackDown Here Comes the Pain off of the World or WWF New York, whatever they wanted to call it at the time. I think they changed it to the World in 2003. And it was just amazing. I mean, it was freaking awesome. I mean, Ruthless Aggression era games, especially during the SmackDown series, was just getting real good, man. Day of Reckoning 2 for the GameCube. I was playing as Rob. I was Rob Van Dam, Batista, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Kenzo Suzuki was in that game, man. It was the roster was just awesome. It was a real good roster, man. I mean, video game wise, Ruthless Aggression era wins hands down. Especially, there's no game that can, just to this day, no game is better than SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. And in my personal opinion, no video games have yet to be better than SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 and 2007, man. Those were just great memories. Even though, like, I was having my problems with the WWE at the time. But I loved those games, man. Those are some really kick-ass games. Day of Reckoning 2. You know, definitely Ruthless Aggression era wins video game category. You know, next category I want to talk about storylines. Attitude era wins hands down with the storylines category. I mean, from the Montreal Screwjob. I mean, if you want to talk about like late '97, that's when the Attitude Era started. Then I'm gonna include the Montreal Screwjob was just really good. D-Generation X. Stone Cold was starting to come into his own. You know, he was about to become the face of the company. You had The Rock coming up. You had like the Nation of Domination still feuding with DX. And it was just like a whole bunch of kick-ass storylines. Survivor Series 1999. Stone Cold getting run over by a car. That was a really cool storyline. You get the feuds between the Hardys, Dudleys, Edge and Christian. You know, from just so many great moments during the Attitude Era. So many great storylines. The McMahon Helmsley regime. Them trying to like screw The Rock out of it. The Rock was he was so damn charismatic. And he was just so awesome. Stone Cold just kicking ass, being a complete badass, man. Attitude Era was just, storyline wise, Attitude Era wins. The Ruthless Aggression Era did have some really good storylines. No, not Katie Vick. But, Eric Bischoff becoming the new general manager of Raw, Stone Cold coming back and feuding with him at No Way Out, and then him becoming the co-GM of Raw. You know, Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker, that was a good feud. But it just, the Ruthless Aggression Era had way more misses than hits. Zach Gowen? Seriously? Obviously Katie Vick sucked. It was like the whole Eddie Guerrero and Dominic storyline, that was just so just bad. That was just stupid. That was just tasteless. Ray becoming world champion was just meh. Didn't want to see that at all. You had some good storylines during the Ruthless Aggression Era. I actually enjoyed the Triple H Shawn Michaels feud from 2002 to 2004. I enjoyed, Eric Bischoff coming back as Raw GM, as I said. I loved when Lita turned heel for the first time. Well, not the first time. She was heel when she was with S.A. Rios, but she wasn't like a big character at that time. This was like the biggest heel turn she did was when she turned heel, went with Edge, screwed Kane over, and then Matt Hardy got pissed off. And then, that's when Edge really started to come into his own as a rated R superstar. He was feuding with Matt Hardy. Those were some good matches. Matt Hardy and Edge. Those guys have good chemistry. They could put on a really good match. I mean, I for one, I know there's gonna be a lot of people who hate this, but I loved JBL's heel turn in 2004 when he basically became this conservative Republican. He was gonna get off on the George Bush heat because everyone hated George Bush at the time. They hate him. They hated him as much back then as so many people hate Barack Obama right now. Um, and he was trying to get the illegals out. That's what his storyline with Eddie Guerrero. That was a good program. Um, you know, um, trying to think. Yeah, there was some good storylines in the Ruthless Aggression era. They brought back ECW One Night Stand. That was pretty cool, but they fucked it up. And that's the thing. Ruthless Aggression era. It was like when you had a good thing, you fucked it up. It was like you fucked up ECW. You know, John Cena was over at the time. I did not care. I hated John Cena. But the fact was he was over, and then you turned him into this boring, cheesy Marine character, and that really fucked up his character. People started booing him at WrestleMania 22. Oh, that was another good storyline. Mick Foley and Edge. That was a great match for WrestleMania 22. I hated Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels feud though. That was stupid. Vince McMahon was trying to pretend that he was God. That was stupid. It was tasteless. It was just pointless. Stupid storyline just to try to get heat. Oh, one other really good character that I loved that came out during the Ruthless Aggression era, Muhammad Hassan. That was a really badass character. He was trying to get over on that 9/11 heat. That was really, I loved Muhammad Hassan and Davari. That was a great heel team. We needed something like that. They were getting a lot of heat. Even though Hassan wasn't that great of a worker, great wrestler, he was a great gimmick. Um, let's see here. But again, the Ruthless Aggression era had more misses than hits. The Attitude Era, it was like you were having hits like every week. Even if something wasn't that great, they found a way to redeem themselves. The Ruthless Aggression era, it would be like hit or miss. I mean, you look at like Hornswoggle with Finley. Like Finley came back, which was cool. He was a great wrestler, great worker. Um, but he came back with Hornswoggle. That was stupid. Um, Hornswoggle being Vince McMahon's son, that was stupid. D-Generation X in 2006, that was just a cheesy sellout version of DX. That sucked. They brought back ECW on Sci-Fi. That sucked. I already mentioned John Cena. They ruined his character, and I never cared about John Cena. But again, like he was actually getting over as a wigger, but people started booing him when he was becoming this goody two shoes like company bitch boy. And he sucked. He sucked. Batista, man, like he had some really good feuds during the Ruthless Aggression era. When he was feuding with Triple H, feuding with Undertaker, WrestleMania 23. That was some good stuff. I really, but it was like you botched Scott Steiner's return. That could have been a really good angle. He could have feuded with The Rock or Stone Cold for a bit. I mean, I know Stone Cold was injured at the time, but he could have had like a really, like imagine if Scott Steiner was the one to retire Stone Cold Steve Austin. They could have made like a storyline like that. Instead of him having his last match with The Rock at WrestleMania 19, that could have got Scott Steiner some really good heel heat. But instead they made him job to Triple H. They made RVD job to Triple H. They fucked over Rob Van Dam. They fucked over so many good wrestlers. Booker T. And it was just like, come on. Like, you guys have any idea how you can make this work? And I also love Kane unmasking. I don't care what anyone says. That was a good storyline. when Kane unmasked for the first time and we all got to see him. He was like a hideous Resident Evil monster, and he was just chokeslamming people off the stage. He was tombstoning Linda McMahon. We had a really good match with Kane and Shane McMahon at Survivor Series 2003. We actually had another good match, Kane and Shane McMahon at Unforgiven 2003. I love seeing Goldberg in the WWE. That was really good. Really cool shit. But again, it was like for every good thing the Ruthless Aggression had, you had some bullshit like the Boogeyman or some stupid crappy gimmick or storyline that sucked. So that's why I got to give it to the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era was at least consistent with good storylines and good feuds and stuff. I mean, it was a much more memorable era. I mean, you could not miss Raw or SmackDown during the Attitude Era. You couldn't miss it. Raw during the Ruthless Aggression Era and SmackDown during the Ruthless Aggression Era, if you missed it, it was no big deal. You could just go on the internet and find out what happened or whatever. It was no big deal. Just like today, it's no big deal if you miss Raw or SmackDown. Like, who cares? I mean, yeah, like something cool might have happened on Raw or SmackDown back then, but it was not must-see TV like the Attitude Era was. Just Attitude Era was just way better storylines. All right, next topic is going to be the roster. Hands down, this is a lot of people are going to be pissed off when I say this. Ruthless Aggression Era had the better roster. Period. I don't give a shit what anyone says. I mean, when you have a company and you have Stone Cold, The Rock, Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, Triple H, Rob Van Dam, Kurt Angle, Booker T, the Murderer, who I can't say his name, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels making a comeback, Goldberg. Did I mention Goldberg already? Brock Lesnar, if I didn't mention him already, I got to mention him. You had so many great cruiserweights. Rey Mysterio, when he was still good before he had all those surgeries. You had Ultimo Dragon coming to SmackDown in 2003. Matt Hardy, he was really trying to become his own as a singles wrestler. The Ruthless Aggression Era, hands down, talent-wise, blew the Attitude Era away. Talent-wise. If you're talking about like just actual wrestlers and talent, the Dudley Boys were still there until 2005. They were still a great tag team. You had so much talent in the WWE at that time. It was amazing. You had a lot, and obviously like Randy Orton when he was the Legend Killer, he was doing some great stuff. Batista was really starting to come into his own. Edge was starting to come into his own as a rated R superstar. The Divas were as hot as ever. I personally, I was rooting for Lita right before she turned heel. She was so over as a face when she was feuding with Trish Stratus for the WWE Women's Championship. I remember that even main evented one of the episodes on Raw. I think it was like in late 2004 or like early 2005. I just remember watching it because I wanted to see Lita become the women's champion again, and she finally did, and it was just awesome. It was just really, really cool stuff. Trish Stratus was a heel because she basically went with Christian at WrestleMania 20, and she became a heel for like the rest of the year. And Lita was a face. It was just good stuff, man. I remember the Lita versus Victoria in that cage match on Raw. That was good stuff. Victoria she was a really great women's wrestler as well. You had Molly Holly, who was a great women's wrestler. I mean, talent-wise, the roster just blew the Attitude Era out of the water. You had so many great wrestlers from WCW, ECW. You still had some great wrestlers from the Attitude Era left over. And you had some great talent from OVW like Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, Randy Orton, Batista, and of course, the bitch boy that no one likes, Cena. It was just talent-wise, Ruthless Aggression era destroyed the Attitude Era. Way better wrestlers, way better wrestling. I mean, so many great memorable matches with Kurt Angle and the Killer, who I can't say his name, but they had a great match at the Royal Rumble in 2003. Shawn Michaels had a great match with Jericho WrestleMania 19. I mean, it was so many great matches during that era. I mean, Rob Van Dam, he was having some really cool ladder matches with like Jeff Hardy and Christian, and he really he was so underrated, man. Seeing Scott Steiner in the WWE again for the first time since the early 90s, and this time he was way better because he was his Big Papa Pump gimmick, and I thought that Big Papa Pump gimmick, Freakzilla, was way better than the Steiner Brothers gimmick he had. I'm just gonna tell it like it is. I don't give a shit what anyone says. It was way better than his normal Steiner Brothers gimmick. You know, and he should have got more of a push. And that's one of the reasons why I hated the brand split during the time, because it was like so many wrestlers I wanted to see wrestle each other, but now you're limiting them to like different rosters, and it was just annoying. But I know why they did it, because they had so much talent, and I mean, they couldn't do what they did in the Ruthless Aggression era during the Attitude Era, because one, they probably would have lost to WCW. Number two, I mean, you didn't have that much talent in the Attitude Era. I mean, you had a lot of great talent: Mick Foley, Stone Cold, Rock, Undertaker, Kane, Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, Dudley Boys. You had a lot of great talent, great wrestlers. Triple H, but you couldn't split Raw is War and SmackDown into two separate brands back then. You could do it in this era. It was possible to do it because that's how much talent you had. So talent-wise, roster-wise, Ruthless Aggression era, hands down. Better wrestling, better roster. Even in like the later part of the Ruthless Aggression era, you still had like RVD, Kurt Angle, the Killer, who I can't name his name. You still had Edge. You still had a lot of really good wrestlers. Triple H was still doing pretty good. Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Batista. You still had an amazing roster, even in the later part of the Ruthless Aggression era. So, that's all I got to say about that. What was the next topic? Well, I might have to do a part two. I might eventually do a part two to this, but I just really wanted to cover like the roster and like the storylines and the video games. Oh, next topic is gonna be matches. That's I'm not gonna do. I might do a part two. I don't know, but let me just do the matches real quick. Match wise, again, I would have to say it's kind of like a draw. I mean, memorable matches would probably be a draw. Maybe I'll probably give it to the Attitude Era, only because I mean, Hell in a Cell match from King of the Ring, 1998. Brett versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. The TLC match from all the TLC matches actually, but especially the one from WrestleMania 17 and SummerSlam 2000. That was a really great match. The triple threat triangle title match between Dudley's, Edge and Christian, Hardys from WrestleMania 2000. That was epic. I mean, it's kind of like a tie because both eras had some really cool matches. I think the Attitude Era matches were probably a little bit more memorable, but if you're just going to talk about in-ring wrestling, then obviously Ruthless Aggression Era had better matches, match quality, like as far as like actual wrestling. But I think Attitude Era had the better, like more memorable matches. From the Ruthless Aggression Era, you obviously, you had that triple threat match between the Killer, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H at WrestleMania 20. Batista versus Triple H, all of them from like WrestleMania 21, Backlash 2005, and Vengeance 2005. They're all great matches. WrestleMania 23, Undertaker, Batista, Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 21. The Murderer versus Kurt Angle at Royal Rumble 2003. Rob Van Dam versus Christian in a ladder match on Raw. Rob Van Dam versus Tommy Dreamer in a ladder match, in a supposedly last hardcore match on Raw. I'm just gonna throw it in there because I enjoyed it. Stone Cold versus Eric Bischoff, No Way Out 2003. I enjoyed the hell out of that match. There was some really cool matches, but again, not as memorable as the Attitude Era matches were. But, you had a lot of really great wrestling matches, a lot of cool matches. Edge versus Mick Foley, WrestleMania 22. Shawn Michaels versus Vince McMahon, WrestleMania 22. Those cool Money in the Bank ladder matches at WrestleMania 21 and 22. I mean, all the Money in the Bank ladder matches were always pretty good, but again, they weren't as memorable as like the tables, ladders, and chairs matches during the Attitude Era. That's just my thoughts on that. That's pretty much it. I mean, that's pretty much all I have. I just kind of wanted to do a comparison, but video game wise, I'm huge on the Ruthless Aggression Era video games. Especially after playing SmackDown Here Comes the Pain again, and WrestleMania. Hated WrestleMania 21. That game sucked. But again, I mean, a lot of Attitude Era games suck too. I mean, Warzone, Attitude, those games were pretty shitty. Just to say the least, they were pretty fucking shitty. But I just preferred the Ruthless Aggression Era video games because the rosters were better. Playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, I was like addicted to that game. General Manager mode, the season mode in that game was good. SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. I'm sorry. The Ruthless Aggression Era video games were way better. They were hands down way better. I love some of the Attitude Era games, like WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy, but they didn't have that much quality like the Ruthless Aggression Era games had. That's, to me, that was like man, I was playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 the other day. God, I forgot how good that game was, man. I almost forgot how good that game was. That game was amazing. I mean, that's just me. I love the Ruthless Aggression Era games better. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on this. What are your thoughts? What era did you like more? Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression Era? Leave a comment, make a video response, make a video. Let me know what you think. What did you prefer, the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era? I think the Attitude Era is probably going to get everyone's vote, but I do think the Ruthless Aggression Era was really cool. And it was very underrated, but it did have a lot of shit that led to the current product today being complete shit. So, I mean, but I do think it was a great era. A good era. Let me take that back. It wasn't a great era. It was a decent, good era. Attitude Era was better, but Ruthless Aggression Era had a better roster. But I'll let you guys decide which is the better one. To me, Attitude Era was a better era, but the Ruthless Aggression Era had the way better video games. That's my opinion. I'm out. Later.